How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and winter might not be over yet for those in the Northeast because there is now the possibility of another winter storm that could impact portions of New England. So if we were to continue to move forward with what the European model is stating at this time, of course, it's been warm throughout much of the United States, especially if you're anywhere to the east of the Mississippi River Valley, as here in northern New Jersey, temperatures were hovering close to the 60-degree range, which is definitely a welcome sight to see. Just to be outside without a coat on, I was definitely happy to see that. However, that might not last forever, like I just said. But continuing to move forward with the forecast, we do see that there's going to be a trough moving just to north of the Canadian border. But let me just fast forward to exactly what I'm talking about for the Northeast, because if we were to take a look on Sunday, March 10th, we do have a small area of snow showers right over the interior portions of New England, as the snow showers could potentially become heavy at times in the higher elevations if this scenario were to be 100% correct, which is, of course, that still has yet to be seen. We're 174 hours out, but moving forward with the forecast, we see that on the backside, that's when it could become more interesting for potentially areas along the coastal Northeast where there is that higher possibility of snowfall. Once we see the cold air on the back side of this storm system move in, and the temperatures could potentially be cold enough for some snow showers closer to the coast in cities like Boston, potentially southern New England as well, and maybe there is that possibility some snow could move into New York City, depending on the exact trajectory of this low pressure system. And taking a look at the millibar pressure of this storm system, it's at 979 millibars, which is quite powerful, definitely powerful enough to bring gusty winds over the area. So you definitely need to be aware of that possibility of blizzard conditions if this scenario were to come for fruition. So we're definitely going to keep an eye on this over the next few days. So the key thing, of course, as always with a lot of storm systems that move into the Northeast, the big question will be is if there's going to be enough cold air for the precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall throughout portions of Northeast. Of course, it's more likely in the interior Northeast, especially now that we're approaching the spring time frame. It's gonna pretty much from here on out, it's gonna become more and more difficult for the coastal Northeast cities experience snowfall, of course, as the temperatures rise. And then the interior Northeast is typically the area that's last when it comes to the temperatures warming up to the point where no snowfall accumulation would to a point where we wouldn't see any more snowfall accumulation. So for the coastal Northeast, it does become, of course, a little bit more uncertain, especially during this time of the year, and it's typical for a lot of storm systems. But in this scenario, it's pretty certain that the interior Northeast gets pounded, while areas like Boston, southern New England, you guys do experience at least a little bit of accumulating snowfall. It definitely isn't as much as what you're seeing in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, but you are certainly experiencing accumulating snowfall, which is, of course, something you still want to be aware of. And by the way, in terms of timing, this would occur right around the Sunday to Monday timeframe, but even that's still uncertain, because if I were to take a look at a GFS model on the flip side, which I'm going to show you guys in just a second, the GFS model is expecting the storm system to move a little bit more quickly, so we would see impacts a little bit earlier on Sunday and potentially as early as Saturday night in some areas of the Northeast. So the key thing will be the amount of cold air, and it really all depends on this trough that's going to be just to the north of this storm system and pretty much move at the same speed towards the east. And depending on how quickly this low pressure system moves southward and how deep it'll move further southward, that'll determine the amount of cold air in the Northeast. So to give you guys a better picture of what I'm talking about, let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly, because it gives a good idea of where exactly the areas of lower pressure will be located and where the areas of higher pressure will be located. So of course, there's a big ridge right over the East Coast, which has been the main catalyst in and bringing the much warmer than average temperatures. We will see a trough move through, potentially a small nor'easter that'll move through by late this week. So be aware of that, especially when it comes to heavy rainfall, because you could maybe see 2 to 3 inches of rainfall from that storm system, which could bring some localized flooding in certain areas, especially if you live near a river or creek that's a little bit more vulnerable to flooding. So you want to be aware of that by the time we approach Wednesday into Thursday for heavy rainfall. But moving beyond that point, going back to this snowstorm that could impact us about as early as this coming weekend, we see that there is a decent amount of cold air there. For the most part, the East Coast is going to be under a fairly strong ridge, so the temperatures will be a little bit warmer. But it's not until this trough moves in where there's going to be a decent amount of cold air just behind it, and there's this other trough that's located more towards Hudson Bay of Canada that has the possibility of bringing a stronger northerly flow, and just enough to the point where there could be enough cold air for the snow to exist right over New England and Northeast. So depending on how strong this low pressure system is, that will determine how much snow you receive, how far south the snow will move, and of course the trajectory will also be determined by the amount of ridging, because if this ridging is a little bit weaker, we should expect a little bit more cold air to move further southward and track a little bit further southward to where the coastal Northeast cities will get a little bit more involved, and then vice versa, where where in a scenario where the ridge is stronger, then we should expect less likely of a chance of snow for the Northeast. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days. As of right now, the European model is bringing the heaviest snowfall to the interior Northeast, while the coastal Northeast is still experiencing accumulating snowfall, just not to the magnitude as what the interior Northeast is expected to experience. So let's take a quick look at the snowfall forecast from the European model for this next coming snowstorm. So if we were to continue to move forward with the forecast, so moving on to the Sunday to Monday timeframe, once this storm system actually moves through, we do see, of course, the heaviest snowfall is in the interior Northeast, where you could experience over a foot. But even cities like Boston, you could maybe experience 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. Connecticut, maybe around 1 to 3. Rhode Island, and this snowfall could maybe bring some snowfall right over New York City. As of right now, it isn't a lot of snowfall, probably less than an inch, but again, we're still far out with the forecast. There maybe could be that possibility the snow moves further southward. I definitely won't rule that out. So make sure to stay tuned for more forecasts, as I'll definitely keep you guys updated regarding the status of this snowstorm moving through the Northeast. The GFS model is also forecasting some snowfall to occur by around the same time period as the European model, and does take a fairly similar trajectory, which could indicate that this forecast might be around the ballpark when it comes to the where exactly the worst areas, where the snow will be the worst in certain areas. So that could be a good indication, but again, we're still over 6 days out, so there's still time to really get the forecast a little bit more accurate. But moving forward with the GFS model, at around the same time period as the European model, we do see some snowfall right over upstate New York, extending into Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Boston could get involved with this initial wave of snowfall. But what's interesting is that we don't necessarily see as strong of a backside, and the thing is that this trough that's expected to be the main catalyst in bringing that cooler air further southward to allow the backside to have a little bit more moisture is moving a little bit too far to the west, and this storm system is a little bit too far to the north, to the point where much of the snow of the convective activity will be too far north to really bring much snowfall on the backside to New England. So the timing is a little bit off when it comes to where exactly the heaviest moisture will fall, which definitely would limit the amount of snowfall you experience in a lot of these areas in New England, as a GFS model just doesn't expect as powerful of a storm system, which means that there's less the snowfall will be less heavy, and that will lead to overall less snowfall accumulation. So it's going to be interesting to see what does happen with the forecasts. We're definitely going to need to see how much cold air will be behind this trough as it moves towards Hudson Bay, because the more cold air there is and the more instability we'll see, the higher the snow totals will be and the more convective activity we'll see. So if we were to take a look at the forecast, we see It's somewhat similar to the European model, but there definitely are some differences. Like I said, the snowfall accumulation isn't as powerful in this scenario, or isn't as high. We mainly see an area right over the interior northeast of 6 to 10 inches of snowfall, while southern New England, for the most part, misses out on snowfall accumulation entirely, mainly because the GFS model doesn't expect the backside of this storm system to be as powerful. So for the interior northeast, I will say it's a bit more likely than not you're going to experience at least some sort of accumulating snowfall. I'm talking about the northern areas of New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, as well as the extreme northern portions of upstate New York and higher elevations. It does become more uncertain for places like central to southern New England, even as far south as New Hampshire and southern Vermont and a city like Albany. It's still pretty uncertain if you're still gonna experience accumulating snowfall, despite the fact that the GFS and the European model are bringing some snowfall accumulation in those areas. So you definitely need to stay tuned as we become a little bit more certain with the forecast, because as you know, the computer models go all over the place when it comes to a storm system that's beyond the 6-day mark. So definitely stay tuned for more videos, as I'll certainly keep you guys updated. But we see that most of the snow is in the interior northeast, but that could change. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.